Welcome, and thank you all for coming out tonight for this really, really important information session regarding the Mayflower Wind project. We have a tight schedule. I'm going to just do a few opening remarks. We will have a presentation by Mayflower Wind. We will have questions and comments, and the most important piece, I believe, for the board to come from this meeting is to hear the presentation, hear the information, but hear from the community. This will not be our only meeting. We'll have concluding remarks at 7:50, and we will adjourn at 8 o'clock. So the purpose of this forum tonight is for the Falmouth community members to learn about the Mayflower Wind proposal, and for the Select Board and Mayflower Wind to hear, again, most importantly, to hear from our community. We've received lots of emails and comments on both sides of this issue, and we have a lot to talk about. So the Select Board role in this Mayflower Wind proposal, we will be looking to evaluate the benefits and the impacts. We will make recommendations to town meeting regarding easements and the Article 97 relief. We will negotiate terms of a host community agreement and determine terms of potential agreements. We will not enter into an agreement unless the project and the terms are deemed to be beneficial to the town of Falmouth, and any agreement will be conditioned on town meeting approval. We don't do this unilaterally. What we have not done, the Select Board has not made a decision on this project. So there's some misinformation out there. Host community agreement has not been executed. We have retained independent engineering firm to evaluate the impacts within the town of Falmouth, and the town has asked Mayflower Wind to consider alternate landfall sites. Those include Falmouth Harbor to Scranton Ave, the Kite Park to Grand Ave, Falmouth Heights Road, and Little Pond to Spring Bars Road. Again, we are looking at these. No decisions have been made. We do not have a timeline for town meeting action or a host community agreement negotiation process. We're not that far along just yet. We will solicit further public input after obtaining additional information on feasibility of alternative landfall locations. We seek your input. The importance of the town taking action on renewable energy and climate change, short-term construction impacts of any proposed electric cable, long-term impacts of underground equipment, long-term impacts of proposed substation, either at 396 Skifford Street or 486 Thomas B. Landers Road. And again, these are all for consideration. They are all ideas. No decisions have been made. So I want to set some ground rules. This is a hotly debated topic, and I'm going to ask that you only speak for 3 minutes. We need to hear from as many people as we can. We will not allow repeat speakers until we've heard everybody for the first time. I ask that you be respectful. We certainly can disagree and continue to treat each other with respect. One speaker at a time, please, and please do not interrupt the speaker. Do not speak unless you are recognized. That's just one way so that we can listen to one person at a time. And now I will turn it over to Mayflower Wind.
Thank you so much for having us here this evening. My name is Dan Hubbard. I'm from Mayflower Wind. I wear two hats at the project. I am the Director of External Affairs, and I'm also legal counsel. I'm joined here this evening by my colleague, Bill Follett. He's our engineering director. So between the two of us, we plan to present the status of the project, give a bit of an overview of the technology, and also hope to answer as many questions as we possibly can for you. The information we're going to provide tonight is based on science and facts as we know them, and in the event that there's something that we don't necessarily have all the information for, we'd be happy to get you in touch with the right experts or the right resources at the project. So beginning a little bit about Mayflower. Mayflower itself is a joint project, or a joint venture between Shell New Energies and Ocean Winds. These are two global companies with vast experience in offshore wind development around the world, as well as energy markets. They bring a host of information, a host of experience and technical experience on how to build energy projects that are sustainable and renewable projects that contribute to the energy mix. Mayflower itself is part of an overarching scheme or overarching design from the Commonwealth, and this is really nested in a couple areas. Those are essentially acts by the legislature to promote green energy. Some of them are the Global Warming Solutions Act, Green Communities Act, as well as the net zero effort by 2030. We're going to be one of the largest contributors to the net zero effort. The project itself is going to eliminate over 4 million metric tons of greenhouse gases annually, which is a massive offset from traditional petroleum-based energy sources. In addition to the climate change and also renewable efforts, there's real savings that are to be had. And based on our first 800 megawatts of our project, the Massachusetts DOER estimated that it'll save the ratepayers of Massachusetts over $2 billion. The Mayflower project will then therefore also account for about 8% of the U.S. national goals for renewable energy. So perhaps why bring offshore wind here? Why bring offshore wind to Cape Cod? The reality of the energy infrastructure is that there's a number of energy sources which are coming offline, roughly about 7,000 megawatts. Those energy sources need to be replaced. And as you can see from the graphic, a number of those are nuclear and coal sources. What Mayflower endeavors to do is replace those energy sources with clean renewable energy that's produced offshore and transmitted safely to the grid here in Cape Cod, as well as in Brayton Point. The conversations we're having here tonight, the discussion we're having here tonight, the comments that you're going to deliver, our responses, and this interface is an extremely, extremely important part of the process. And it's happening all over New England. It's happening in New York as well. There's been a number of offshore wind procurements, roughly around 9,000 megawatts of offshore wind. And this is to replace some of the aging infrastructure, the aging energy sources such as coal and nuclear power. Our grid connections, Mayflower has a firm commitment to deliver 1,200 megawatts of renewable energy to the Commonwealth by the end of the decade. As you may have seen in the news recently, we've taken our first power purchase agreement, which was 804 megawatts, as well as our second power purchase agreement of 804 megawatts. That is planned to be delivered to Brayton Point. That's the site of one of the former coal plants that's being retired. Here in Cape Cod, the transmission system will require significant upgrades in order to be able to accept offshore wind that's planned to Falmouth. This is really a number of factors, some of which are the planning of the Independent Service Operators of New England, or ISO New England, as well as the transmission owners. And as those transmission solutions are being developed to build a stronger and more resilient grid, Mayflower plans to progress our projects. Mayflower will deliver its first 1,200 megawatts, as I mentioned, through our power points to Somerset. And that's largely because that point of interconnection is going to be ready first. So from there, we then plan to deliver the remaining 1,200 megawatts from our lease into Falmouth in a subsequent phase. With that, I'd like to introduce Bill again. He's going to cover some of the technical matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, folks. Thanks for coming out. So what you have up on the screen there is a overview of the lease areas offshore of southeastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island, with the Mayflower project highlighted in blue. We purchased or were awarded the lease from the U.S. federal government in 2018 for 127,000 acres. The lease area in all the, within the whole southeastern Massachusetts, Rhode Island lease area is divided up on a 1-by-1 nautical mile grid, and that provides 149 lease or turbine positions, buildable positions for us out in the lease area. We have, given the size of the lease and the growth of wind turbines over time, we have the ability to deliver 2,400 megawatts from the lease area to the New England grid. The first to the South Coast project at Brayton Point will become from the northern end of the lease. You can see the cable running from there off to the left. And then the second is intended to come from the bottom area of the lease, or the lower southern half of the lease, and run to Falmouth. And this is, again, as Dan alluded to, this is a change from what we initially spoke about, and that change was precipitated by the ability to connect to the grid and deliver our power in the time frames that are required. See, as the engineering director, if I can do this. All right. So I'm sure folks have seen this, but wow. Okay. So sorry about that. Is that better? All right. Good. As you can see on the screen here, here's an overview of the wind farm design. I'm sure many of you have probably seen this, but you know the electricity is generated out at the wind turbines and then connected through a series of cables to an offshore converter station, offshore substation, where the power is transformed to high voltage DC current and transmitted via export cable to an onshore converter station and HVAC substation. From there, the power is transmitted via overhead lines to the transmission system, where we connect into the New England grid. You can see the export cable area, and the export cable area comes ashore, and as we've spoken about and have in our documentation, proposed landfall locations for Worcester Park and Central Court, and then transfers and moves up to two potential locations for our substation. This is an overview of the route for the project. So there's a preferred and an alternative route. The preferred route is approximately 2 miles long and runs to Gifford Street, the Lawrence Lynch facility, the existing gravel pit there. And then the alternate route runs approximately 8 miles to Thomas Landers Road to a facility up there. Both facilities, whether the substation is located on Gifford Street or on Thomas Landers Road, they will both connect into the transmission system at the broader, at the Falmouth, North Falmouth location. And, you know, a couple of points on how we chose these routes. So, you know, when we looked at these routes, there's multiple considerations. So they are evaluated based on how impacts to community, impacts to environmental considerations in the area, and obviously access to transmission. Here's an overview of some of the landfall sites that we evaluated in our analysis of on how to attach to the grid, how we would connect to the grid. As you can see, there's numerous points that we've evaluated in there, and we believe that based on the detailed routing and siting process that we followed, that we've selected the two that are that work the best. One of the current concerns that we hear is how will the export cables or the cables, when they make shore or they land on shore, how will they impact the beach area? We use a technique called horizontal directional drilling, which essentially drills down below ground and drills under the beach and then exits offshore, right, at a water depth of approximately 40 feet, in this case, somewhere in that range. This methodology avoids disturbing the beach, this coastal sensitive habitats, and also avoids areas such as eelgrass, etc. When the horizontal directional drilling is complete, the only sign that there was anything that happened in that area will be a street vault that will be covered, right? So it will look like a typical utility manhole. High voltage direct current. So what we've initially when we proposed the connection into Falmouth, it was a high voltage alternating current connection. Because of the distance from shore, we've had to switch to high voltage DC. High voltage DC is a much better technology for transmitting large amounts of power over long distances. It has far lower losses and requires fewer cables. I think that's one of the key benefits of using HVDC is instead of having 3 cables that separate into 12 cables or more, or sorry, 9 cables, we're down to just 2 cables in the street. So it makes for a significantly smaller footprint, both onshore and fewer transition vaults near the shore landings. HVDC technology is well established in the US, North America, and is prevalent all throughout Europe as well. Again, one of the key components and advantages that we believe of HVDCs is the fewer cables to shore, smaller footprint, and a smaller substation footprint as well. Again, I'm repeating myself here, so I won't spend a lot of time on this, but more efficient over longer distances. And one of the questions that we always get is about EMF or electromagnetic fields. Electromagnetic fields from HVDC transmission systems are very similar to the magnetic fields that we all live in the Earth's magnetic field. When the HVDC cables are installed and the electrical field around those cables is only very slightly larger than the Earth's magnetic field. And as with any electromagnetic field, the farther away you move from the source, it dissipates. Mayflower's conservative modeling, right, is you can see those results on our website, but our conservative model suggests that we are well below established international health guidelines. This is an example of the HVDC and HVAC duct bank. You can see that the footprint of these different duct banks will be, for the HVDC is significantly smaller than the HVAC. Here's an overview. This is the Gifford Street substation proposed location, and to the left is the HVAC 345 kV proposed layout, and to the right in yellow is the HVDC layout. So you can see that it's significantly smaller. The HVDC footprint is approximately 6 to 8 acres versus approximately 20 to 25 for an similar size HVAC station. For the Thomas Landers Road, again, here's a comparison again, right? You can see the difference in the footprints here. Again, significant reduction. Construction impacts. So overall construction we expect to last 2 to 3 years. That includes the construction of the substation and the work of installing the cables in the roads. The HDD work is expected to take 3 to 5 months, and the work in the roads and for the HDD will be conducted in the off-season. Also, the intent in this is that the
I'm going to ask, please, that we just remember to be respectful. Thank you. I'm just going to ask that we remember to be respectful, please.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I'd also just like to remind you to be respectful of the time.
Yes. Thank you.
Obviously, you have not asked Mayflower Wind. They're speaking for 16 minutes already now.
Thank you.
And I would like you to be respectful
Thank you, sir. Yes, I hear that. Yes, thank you. That's enough. They will have their 16 minutes, and if they need additional time, they can ask. I am. That. Mayflower Wind.
So to continue and move forward here, Mayflower is committed to complying with all of the town regulations and has worked closely to understand and avoid impacts to abutters, or will work to avoid impact to abutters. Dan?
Thank you very much. I'll move through these quickly, sir. So community benefits.
Sir, you're out of line. Please let them finish. You're not correct about the time. I'm going to ask them to move through quickly because I agree that we need to give the audience the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just last two slides, and these are on community benefits. Mayflower recognizes that we want to assist and we want to become a valuable part of this area of the state. We are ultimately would, as was mentioned by the chair, be moving towards a host community agreement that potentially provide annual revenue for the town itself. We've supported community events, and we've supported the road race. We are going to support it again this year, and also we're supporting the fireworks this year. We're also involved in a number of local groups, the Cape Cod Chamber, the Falmouth Chamber, and Friends of Knobsco Light. Also, sort of most importantly, I think is of value here is we've already committed $5 million towards strategic electrification for low income ratepayers here on the Cape in particular. We also hope to foster and grow STEM through the educational institutions here on the Cape and support where we can growth as the industry grows. Yeah, just also the construction of the project itself will have benefits to the local community. It's as well as in terms of places to stay, supply, food, things like that. Last slide is what's influencing our timeline. We mentioned that 1,200 megawatts from our project. The first part is going to Brayton Point. That's on a timeline. There's a number of things influencing our project. What does this mean for Falmouth? The status of the grid here in Cape Cod will influence it. Taking time to carefully consider the things that you bring to us tonight, and we will. Future procurements for offshore wind, that's going to be a big driver for when we set timelines. With that, I don't want to belabor any points. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for having us this evening. We look forward very much to having discourse and discussing with you. Thank you.
Okay, community questions. What I would ask is that you line up behind the microphone, either one, and we'll go back and forth.
Can you hear me? My question has to do with the zoning and the zoning bylaws in Falmouth and the past history of what they've done with all the wind turbines. Prior to the construction of the first Falmouth Town-owned Vestas V82 wind turbine, a study was done by the town by KEMA that showed up to 99 homes could be affected by noise. The manufacturer warned prior to construction in writing that the turbine generates 110 decibels of noise. The town failed to hold hearings or make abutter notifications over noise levels. The setbacks for 110 decibels today are nearly 3,000 feet. Prior to the construction of a second wind turbine, in a rare June 2009 special town meeting was held in which town officials told town meeting members that $5 million for building a turbine was the grant from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. The money was the project regulatory agreement proposed by the Mass Department of Environmental Protection that required the turbine remain energy efficient. The town recently agreed to pay back $975,000 on the loan. In addition, in order to receive the funds for the second foreign-made turbine, the town had agreed in a U.S. EPA waiver the town would file Special Permit 240-166. The town never filed for the special permit. The courts determined the turbine's a nuisance and the demolition project to remove the turbines was awarded last month. The town has met with the offshore wind turbine company for 2 years to work out a host community agreement with no public input. The HCA is millions of dollars spread over 20 years. The payment is for burying commercial-grade power lines up to 345,000 volts through Falmouth, a vacation destination. A recent draft study done by the town shows a new onshore wind substation generates 110 decibels of noise. Another draft study shows the electric magnetic field above the onshore buried cables is 500 milligas, directly above the cables on Worcester Court. This would require mitigation such as fencing, signage, or placing the cables deeper. Mayflower Wind petitioned the state of Massachusetts to bypass Falmouth zoning regulation designed for health and safety enacted by Falmouth Town Meeting and approved by the Massachusetts Attorney General. So the question is, why won't Falmouth go through the local zoning regulations, hold the public hearings, and notify the abutters to the cable route? And I'd like to include my remarks in this meeting. Thank you.
Are we alternating here? I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. The World Energy Model Report of 2021, put out by the IEA, refers to an ambition gap that needs to be closed to achieve the goals agreed at in Paris in 2015. Hopefully, most of the people in this room agree that there is a need for rapid transition away from climate-warming fossil fuels toward clean, renewable energy. Falmouth now has the opportunity to contribute to that transition and not leave it to our children. Inaction in the face of the climate crisis is unacceptable, in my view. We can no longer kick the can down the road, nor should we choose to kick the can onto somebody else's road. I applaud Mayflower Wind for having conducted the extensive research and planning necessary to get such a complicated offshore wind farm project as far as it has gotten, and for having made that information readily available to the public on the BOEM website. Just the 2 volumes, 944 pages of the construction and operations plan could form the basis for a course in ocean engineering. I also applaud the Falmouth Select Board's efforts to address the concerns of community members who are most directly affected by these plans, and for commissioning independent reports to help critically evaluate those concerns. Many Falmouth residents, including myself, have submitted questions to Mayflower, and the answers to quite a few of those questions have been posted on the Mayflower website. There is much to be learned from offshore wind development in Europe and in the US, including Cape Cod. Denmark, for example, was the first country in the world to build an offshore wind farm. That was back in 1991. We are not breaking new ground here. My wife and I visited our daughter in England late last year. The Rampion project in the English Channel, near her town, comes ashore on 150 kV cables. The Vineyard Wind project in Barnstable will have 220 kV cables. Mayflower has proposed 320 HVDC cables. Mayflower sites underground transmission cables in Europe and Asia rated up to 500 kV. I have every confidence the Select Board will evaluate the proposed future plans in the light of scientific information and the experiences of other communities. If a well-thought-out host community agreement can be worked out with Mayflower, economic benefits from the interconnection could help our town fund future climate and coastal resiliency initiatives. I expect and hope that there will be a continuing dialogue between Mayflower Wind and the residents of Falmouth and our representatives. And I have 6 questions that I hadn't submitted, but I think that's probably my time.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. I was just going to ask that. Well done.
David Leslie, Falmouth. Yeah, what else? Okay. Off of Woods Hole Road. Make that close to Locust Street.
My house will be for sale, so I can move.
Go ahead, sir.
My name is Tim Kickham. I own a home located at 24 Worcester Avenue in Falmouth Heights. I have been residing there since 1964. I am opposed to the Mayflower project location on the median strip from Falmouth Heights Beach through Worcester Park and Worcester Court. My profession is a mortgage originator for a bank. I've been practicing that for 32 years now. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, and the Veterans Administration have restrictions relative to providing a mortgage to a home that is located within 100 feet of a high voltage easement. I made it a point to measure that distance myself, and if you get on Worcester Park and Worcester Court, you're well less than 100 feet any home to the line where the high voltage will go through. This installation would prevent homeowners from obtaining VA, FHA, and potentially government-sponsored enterprise mortgages, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, due to the high voltage area. Beyond VA and FHA financing, the marketability of the home would need to be addressed when high voltage wires are concerned relative to the bank's underwriting. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Carol Zimian, Amherst Ave, in Falmouth Heights. It's common sense you do not run a bundle of potentially dangerous industrial-sized electric cables under a widely used family beach and then through the streets of a densely populated residential town for miles, 2 to 8. There are serious consequences when you do for homeowners, children, visitors, renters, and business people. This Mayflower Wind project is huge and commercial in nature. A cement vault buried under the parking lot, electric magnetic cables running under the sand, on the beach, and then running the length of the park, and many miles beyond to a huge substation does not seem to be in the residents, renters, visitors, small business owners, or town's best interest. More likely only in the interest of big corporations sponsoring it. Shell Oil, Ocean Winds, Renewable. My family and I have been homeowners in the Heights since 1967. We are opposed to Mayflower Wind's proposed plan to onboard high voltage power cables carrying up to 1,200 megawatts to our shore and route them under our beach and then traverse them underground for those miles of densely populated historic residential neighborhoods and beyond, passing by a park that serves children and adults throughout the year in at least one school, a nursing home, an inn, a hotel, other residential neighborhoods, and several small businessmen as well. We are concerned that there has been a lack of transparency by Mayflower and our town's leadership concerning the project, which, as already stated tonight, has been in making a long time, 2 years or more. We only found out several months ago. Insufficient attention to the consequences of projected zoning variances, which will adversely affect land currently used for public recreation and quiet, healthy enjoyment, is troubling. As to the long-term health effects of high-voltage cables and their associated magnetic fields will have on children and others in the immediate area is still unclear, and any negative health effects, as far as I am concerned, are unforgivable. My husband and I and our children hold dearly the times we've had in Falmouth. The Heights Beach, the Worcester Court Park, the ball field, and more help shape us and are now helping to shape our grandchildren. So it is with a sad heart I speak here tonight. From everything I've read and seen concerning this project, this is not right. This has not been thoughtfully planned. This is surreal and cannot really happen. The Heights Beach and Worcester Court Park are gems. If Mayflower Wind is allowed to alter these states, they're near the beach places that so many residents and homeowners, renters, visitors, and tourists have come to love and will become memories of yesteryears. There are many disadvantages to the location proposed during construction and after. The number of months the roads will be impassable, and thankfully they told us that tonight, and the parking lot full of construction equipment, the 16-foot cement wall and 22-foot cement wall, 2 walls on each side of various areas where the construction will be taking place that people will have to look at for months, listening to the facts tonight. The fact that trees cannot be planted on top or near the cable sites due to their roots, and much, much more. I think it's time to lift the Iron Curtain and show the truth about how this community is really going to be affected in the long run. It is difficult not to overlook the existing windmills our tax dollars paid for, but that are not producing energy promised, and instead serve as reminders that the plans of some men and some women go astray, and residents lose, and then still pay for the loss years and years later. I conclude with a few quick ideas here. I read your website. I applaud the person who did as well that spoke before me. But some of the questions that I have...
I'm going to ask you to start to wrap it up, please. It's over 4 minutes.
Okay, I certainly will, okay? So I will conclude with, I worry that Mayflower lists itself as an LLC, limited liability corporation. Why is that so? Because oftentimes when companies do work and they go astray, their major plans, who ends up holding the bag? The residents. All we have to look as a great project like sun projects, solar panel projects. I have to edit this very quickly. Okay,
I'm going to need to move on.
Yes,
You've
so
been to
all I ask
5
then
minutes.
of you, our select board, our town, and maybe Mayflower Wind, please find a construction site, not a densely populated neighborhood of one-ways
Thank
and
you.
very crowded streets. Thank you very much.
Just a quick reminder to keep it to 3 minutes, just so we can hear everyone. Go ahead, Mr. Moriarty.
Good evening, everyone. And I just want to say thank you to all the citizens of Falmouth. I'm so impressed and so happy you are all here tonight to protect your community. I'm here tonight. Oh, I thought you knew. Dave Moriarty, lifelong resident of Falmouth, Massachusetts. Right now, unfortunately, I spent too much time in activism and I lost my home. So now I live on Sandwich Road. I used to have a beautiful home in Falmouth, but I just spend too much time fighting these people. Okay, I only got 3 minutes. I'm sorry. That's part of your okay, hey, I'm here tonight to talk about the Falmouth Field Energy, the Massachusetts Field Energy Program, okay? All this fake it and take it in Massachusetts has got to end. It's got to end here, right now, tonight. Intentionally torturing my friends and citizens of the Falmouth for 7 years intentionally because you had all the information and you didn't give it to anybody. I'm so disappointed and depressed with my officials. I can't believe how low they stooped. Okay, now, about Mayflower Wind. The only good thing about Mayflower Wind is they picked the right name. You see, Mayflower and the Pilgrims made their first encounter in Provincetown, P-Town. But they found that the soil was too rocky and too sandy to have agriculture and sustain themselves. So they moved on, like they moved on to Fall River, but they didn't tell anybody, did they? We've been begging them to go to Fall River for 3 years. A week before the meeting, they canceled the project? Come on, people, you're smarter than that, right? Jesus. All right, now listen. The Mayflower Wind Factory, there's no farming going on with wind, okay? The only farming going on is the green dollars being extracted out of your wallets. That's the only farming going on here, okay? So with that said, I say, I'm so sorry. I just wrote this 5 minutes ago, but you know what? The point is we've been lied to all by our elected officials. We've been treated, mistreated, not respected, totally treated like crap. And let me tell you something. We are not going to take it here in Falmouth, Massachusetts anymore. I'm telling you right now, Mayflower Wind, it's time to find a new place for your power supply because it's never coming into Falmouth. Thank you.
My name is Jerry Ryan. As a long-time, full-time resident, as many of my neighbors are, of Worcester Court, I support clean energy development. However, I do not support this being done in such a densely populated area. What started out as an 800 megawatt cable has turned into a 1200 megawatt cable, which is 2 times the amount of power generated by the now defunct Pilgrim Power Plant. My grandkids, all in their 20s now, spent the entire summers and most weekends of their growing up years on Falmouth Heights Beach, the Worcester Court Green, playing catch or tag, or simply walking down the middle of the green to the beach. They took swim lessons at the beach, took part in the men's club activities, sailing lessons, etc. I would like to see this tradition being passed down to my great-grandkids, but would not feel comfortable with 2 times the amount of power of the Pilgrim Power Plant running under the beach or the green. Approximately 3 years ago, the town of Falmouth spent almost $1 million to add sidewalks and redo the Worcester Court Green space, adding benches and beautiful trees. The impacts on our neighborhood have irreversible consequences, such as the loss of trees in the green, marine life, home values, enjoyment of our beach and park. Health concerns are huge. Yes, health. Let's not forget that they once said tobacco, lead paint, and asbestos were safe. Mayflower is taking the easiest, least expensive way to do this. Shame on the town if they let this happen. This should be a project for an industrial area, not a densely populated residential area. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Chris Muty. My family's been in the Heights area for over 60 years, and I live in Miami Ave. I just have a couple of simple questions. Was the long Little Pond route something new? Because I've not heard anything about that other than tonight. And secondly, if you don't get the future procurements of electricity, does the project drag on for 4, 5, 6 years if they're not selling the electricity out there? And I completely support what the last speaker said. And thank you.
Go ahead.
My name is Maura Aldrich, and I do live on Woods Hole Road. But if you do a quick search in regards to climate change in Cape Cod, let's see, sea level to rise hit Cape Cod hard. NOAA does reports. How is climate change going to strand the sea turtles? They're going to bring more pests. There's going to be decomposition of all the dunes, predictions of Cape Cod and the beaches not even being here. So my point is, why the hell would you even want to put a project here if we might not even be here in Cape Cod? If you're concerned about climate change, maybe you think something a little bit inward. That's my comment. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Peter Laird. I live at 11 Sunfish Lane, which is off of Thomas Landers Road. It's very nearby the Cape Cod Aggregates substation alternative site. We also own land that is immediately adjacent to Cape Cod Aggregates, which would be immediately adjacent to this substation. My family's been coming here since 1960, and about 14 years ago, my wife and I built our retirement home on Crooked Pond. It's a beautiful wooded area, and over the years, as wooded land became available, I wanted to preserve the area. So my wife and I have spent over $250,000 just buying land in that area just to preserve it for the wildlife. There's abundant deer, various animals. The bird life is incredible out there. It's a beautiful, idyllic neighborhood, one that people don't know a lot about, but it's a beautiful place to live, and I'd really love to preserve it. So when we heard about the Mayflower site building a substation possibly on the Cape Cod Aggregates land, and they talked about a 22-foot sound barrier. Surrounding the property. I'm 5'6". So if you stack me 4 high, that's how high that is. If you're a basketball fan, the Celtics fan, it's two hoops high plus 2 feet. Just looking here at this stage, I would say 22 feet is about the size of the curtain that's behind the people on the dais here. It's monstrous. To have that go into an area where there's abundant wildlife adjacent to residential homes, I just don't think is a good idea. I'm a believer in the Boy Scout adage, you always try to leave the campsite a little better than you found it. I don't think this project is leaving Falmouth in a better spot than the way we found it. The second point is zoning regulations are put in to protect the town and the townspeople and the residents of the town. When we built our home 14 years ago, we complied with all the building codes, the zoning codes, the Conservation Commission restrictions to the T. It cost us money in certain cases with respect to conservation, et cetera, but we were willing to do it in order to abide by the town regulations. I don't see why we should suspend town regulations, zoning regulations, for an LLC that's 50% owned by a foreign corporation. Just doesn't make sense to me. Another point is I would encourage everyone to read the consultant's report. The selectmen hired a consulting firm to write a report to give them some guidance. I would encourage everybody to go on the Falmouth government website and read that report. Just in the executive summary, they mentioned that they identified multiple concerns regarding the acoustic requirement technique in addition to the underlying assumptions in the model and analysis. So the consultants had some problems with what they found in the Mayflower materials. They also stated that...
Sir, I'm going to ask you to start to wrap it up, please.
Okay. My final point is, with the experience with the wind turbines that we've had over the last 10 years here, why would we undertake another major project like this that could lead to litigation for years?
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dave Buzanowski, Lucerne Avenue. I'm also president of the Falmouth Heights Meri Vista Neighborhood Association. Firstly, allow me to commend Mayflower for their choice of Brayton Point, industrial coal-fired power plant. A perfect solution. It was a win-win for everybody. I wish I could say the same about your choice of Falmouth. I'm here today speaking on behalf of our membership, and Madam Chair, I hope you can indulge me and allow me a little time because I'm speaking for over 450 members. On behalf of the membership, we've surveyed our members, and 87% of the respondents are not opposed to wind. We're not opposed to clean energy. We're not opposed to climate efforts that Mr. Leisley mentioned. However, we are specifically opposed to Mayflower boarding their cables in a densely populated residential community of Falmouth Heights. Falmouth Heights has a long, rich history. It was one of the first, if not the first, planned resort communities in the country. The plan was filed in 1871, just 6 years after the Civil War ended. Our predecessor organization, the Falmouth Heights Improvement Association, was started in 1889, and one of its missions, as it is today, is to preserve and improve the residential character of our community. We do not believe that Mayflower's plans benefit our community in any way, and in fact, inflicts long-term irreparable damage. Let me address several other issues with respect to
levels of protection of our community. The original investors in the Falmouth Heights resort community, over a period of ebbs and flows in the real estate market, fell on hard times in the early 1900s. And at the end, only one of the partners remained as the owner of all the streets and avenues and remaining unsold property. In 1903, Mrs. Elvira Goodwin, the widow of the last partner who was deceased, gifted to the town the streets and avenues and 6 parks in Falmouth Heights. 3 of those parks are the targets of Mayflower Wind, specifically Worcester Park, Central Park, and Crescent Park. The important part of this deed is that it specifically stipulated that the land shall always be kept open and for public use. No building or other obstruction shall be placed upon any of the lands, and it's subject to the right of the abutters. There's much more legal wording in there, and I do believe that the Select Board is well aware of this deed, as they have recognized same in prior years when there was thought of putting a bathhouse on the ball field at Central Park. We would hope that the town would honor the wishes of our most generous benefactor. And just by the way, we have also retained a Boston law firm of Prince, Lobel, and Ty, who are looking into our rights as abutters, as well as other matters. Our next level of protection is the Falmouth zoning ordinances. In reading the purpose of the zoning bylaws, Article 1, just to name a few of these purposes of the zoning laws. Number 1, to protect the public health and safety welfare of the community. To secure safety from fire, flood, panic, and other dangers. To facilitate the adequate provision of transportation, water supply, drainage, schools, parks, open space, and other public requirements. To conserve the value of land and buildings, which is right in line with what the previous gentleman said about the property values. To protect and enhance the conservation of natural resources and environment. And there are several other matters, but they don't specifically relate. So my question in that regard is, why is Mayflower seeking a comprehensive zoning exemption? So one other aspect of our protection, does anybody recognize these words? The people shall have the right to clean air and water, freedom from excessive and unnecessary noise, and the natural, scenic, historic, aesthetic qualities of their environment, and the protection of the people in their right to the conservation, development, and utilization of agriculture, mineral, forest, water, air, and other natural resources is hereby declared to be a public purpose. Anybody recognize those words? Article 97 of the Massachusetts State Constitution. Mayflower is seeking relief from Article 97. All our rights, they just want to take away from us. So,
Sir, you're at 6 minutes.
Yep,
If you could
I'll
start to
be
wrap it
I'll
up
be
then.
quick. I'm just wrapping it up now, if you
Great.
don't mind. The one solution I see to this problem would be for Mayflower to find another suitable industrial site and turn their attention away from Falmouth. That, however, does not appear to be in Mayflower's consideration, and therefore we must rely on our final protection, if you will, and that's to our elected officials to protect the community from third-party, large-scale industrial, commercial endeavors such as this. We would ask the Select Board and the town meeting members to do the right thing for the community and the town of Falmouth.
Thank you.
My name is Rosemary Gagnon, and I live on 21 Sunfish Lane, and I'm a direct abutter of the massive substation. I wondered if we could put that slide back up that actually showed the street.
because we're not talking small scale. It's 6 acres. You are 400 feet from my property line. So I get to listen to it, live it. My house was the nice house with the pool in the backyard. So I get to look at your 20-foot concrete wall. What about my property rights? You know, it's not a good starting place at Falmouth Heights. The substation in my yard or anybody else's yard is not fair. I've been in this town for 40-something years. I bought on my street. I was lucky enough to get on Sunfish. We have acres of property, as Mr. Laird talked about. It's a dirt road. We want it to stay that way. There's nothing of value for this project going through as far as I'm concerned. I heard today that somebody couldn't even buy my house because they couldn't get a mortgage. I mean, it just keeps getting better and better for us. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Put it someplace that is not going to ruin so many lives. Go away. Yeah, I also bought 2 acres in Falmouth, which is unheard of. Everybody on my street owns, 10 plus, because my retirement home is the home I'm in, and I also have a stable permit pulled for the town of Falmouth to eventually have my horse in the backyard. But I wouldn't even put my horse in the backyard now with all this electromagnet, Come on. Like, it's not the right place. From start to finish, it's not the right place. Ruining the beaches, ruining the roads. It doesn't benefit anybody but you.
Thank you.
Greg Masmanian, Precinct 2. They say devil is in the details. I've spent countless days and hours reading the 503-page proposal by Mayflower. In addition, the exponents report to the town. Again, that's the independent consultant the town has hired. In an effort not to repeat what people have already said, I'm going to skip around a little bit, but here's some highlights. And I quote from exponent, "None have concluded that either electronic fields or magnetic fields cause or contribute to any adverse health effects, including cancer or other chronic diseases, at low exposure levels found in the environment." I would then ask, is 340,000 volts going under our roadways and green areas considered low levels? And I quote, "In summary, most of the recent published improved studies show no statistical significant associations between estimates of magnetic field exposure and childhood leukemia. However, the association observed in some of the early studies remains unexplained." Does unexplained really mean we don't know? Furthermore, again, I quote from exponent, "The study of Kahn et al. In 2021, previously described in the section on adult brain cancer, also examined magnetic fields exposure to nearest transformer stations. Statistically significant association was reported for acute lymphoma leukemia. Would a 24-acre substation that was recently reported near your home concern you? Julian et al., 2021, again I quote from exponent, conducted a meta-analysis of occupational exposure to EMF magnetic fields and electric shocks, developed ALS. A weak statistical significant association was reported between magnetic fields and exposure to ALS. What are we subjecting ourselves to? Now, I'll directly quote from the exponent report. Massachusetts Entity Facilities Siting Board, the EFSB, previously deemed magnetic fields of 85 mg at the edge of transmission lines right-of-way to be acceptable. Review of the EMF fact sheet, again submitted by Mayflower, indicates that magnetic fields at the beach were calculated at less than 10. because the burial depth is greater than 50 feet, but were calculated to be much higher over the transmission vaults, equal to 350 mg, or directly above burial cable duct banks of over 500 mg on portions of the onshore route where cables to be installed at shallower depths. I continue with what exponents said to the select board and to the town, and by the way, you can read this on the town website. Both, I quote, both the Worcester Ave and Central Park terminate with splice faults in an open green space. The Worcester Ave option would terminate in a green space with splice faults beneath or very near to an existing park bench or benches. The Central Park option would terminate with splice faults beneath a soccer field near the intersection of Central Park Ave and Crescent Ave, based upon modeling levels reported by Mayflower in the MF fact sheet. MF, or magnetic field levels above the transition bolts, would be up to 350 mg. Continue to quote, nevertheless, it is surprising that Mayflower has not considered a plan to splice faults away from green space to minimize magnetic field exposure. MF levels at Mayflower Wind Project are incomplete. Incomplete.
So I'm going to ask you to begin to wrap it up, please.
I will do my best. I will do my best. Given concerns by some of the members of the public about EMF, Mayflower Wind could have estimated the effect of the project on magnetic fields at distances that might contribute to long-term average exposure. I'm going to skip the noise pollution. By the way, acceptable by the state is 65 dBAs. There will be as much as 120, 100 as published in the report by Exponent. A jet engine produces 120, okay? People have already talked about sound barriers. There's also a visual barrier because there will be light pollution at the substations. I'm just going to kind of end it all. Actually, I have a question for Mayflower. I was looking at your website the other day, and I saw after Mayflower Wind, it says LLC. Could you tell me what LLC means? What's LLC stand for?
It stands for Limited Liability Corporation.
Thank you.
Maura?
Maura Powers, 302 Thomas Landers Road. This would be kitty corner across the street from me having a substation. And was the previous speaker just said about light pollution? One of the things I love about night at my home is that it is dark. I can see the stars. And there are other parts in town, you can't see that much. So I'm really upset about this because it will also lessen our home values. Now, I'm all for renewable energy, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, Shell Oil is Shell Oil. They're thinking about their profits and what they're going to get out of it. And we have to fight and make sure that things are done smart. And this is not smart. Brant Point, that's smart. You already have the infrastructure there to be able to accommodate a substation. This one is going to be built from the ground up. And I don't think it's fair for the people of this town, even if it's at Lawrence Lynch Corporation, because there's neighborhoods around there. And I don't think it's fair for the people of this town to have to be the sacrificial lambs to appease renewable energy when there are so many other ways this could be done, and it's not being done smart. And one of the things that that gets me is like, didn't we learn anything with the wind turbines? And I see this just becoming another one of those issues that the woulda, coulda, shoulda. And we can't do that. We have to think about what's best for this town, not what's best for Shell Oil, but what's best for the people of this town. And one of the things I really find ironic is that the Cape Cod aggregates parcel is over our aquifer. And so I find it ironic that to have renewable clean energy, there's going to be dielectric fluids that will have to be disposed of properly, because you can't just put it in the ground, because that will affect our drinking water. So how does this benefit us then? And also, as previous speakers have said, this should not be in a town. It should be in a place where there aren't any neighborhoods, where people's health and just being able to enjoy their lives is going to be at stake. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Quick proposal for valet parking next time. My name's Alex Kahn. I just bought Shipwrecked in the Heights Hotel in Falmouth Heights. I'm going to do a slightly different angle. You know, I don't know much about the technical aspect. I don't live on Worcester Court, but I do have a slightly different angle I'd like to just talk about. So last year I bought the restaurant and hotel, and I fully knew the knowns. You know, COVID was raging, as it kind of still is. It's a risky business, and it's very competitive. And we're in a different time now, even from a year ago. You know, labor costs are, you know, through the roof. I have 100 employees in the summer, in the season, and 40 in the off season. And these are good paying jobs. And food costs, as anyone knows, it keeps going up and up. And inflation, of course, is affecting everybody here. And the reason I bring that up is for two reasons. The first is I'm a little sensitive to large construction projects. I used to live in the North End during the Big Dig in the 90s. And I saw what it did to everything. You know, people just stopped coming. They just avoided it entirely, and it's because they couldn't find parking, they couldn't get there at all, or just the roads were so bad that they just, again, completely avoided it. And so I wanted to bring up a concern of mine, and that is that if there is a construction project in the Heights, again, we talked about season and off-season. I think I can argue that that's a bit of a gray area now, but during the season, people will get down there no matter what. Okay? That's not a concern. What I have a concern for is in the off-season. If people put a mental bubble or block or barrier around the Heights, the hotel and restaurant will suffer to the point that it might not survive. And so what I'm looking to do is learn more about what I need to do to prepare if something like that is going to happen, because I might have some hard decisions to make. And again, 100% for green energy, particularly in this current market, the climate and global conflicts. But I'm trying to look out for me and the 100 employees I have, because that's a real challenge. Thank you all very much.
So I'm Wendell Bishop from East Falmouth, and I'll start off by saying that I am in favor of Mayflower Wind. However, I do think that Falmouth has been left out on some early decision-making that is very important and that we should be getting back in on. I've heard an awful lot about how power would be carried through Falmouth. I haven't heard very much about why power is being carried through Falmouth. Brayton Point, as a lot of people have mentioned, is an ideal spot where you go ashore and there's a connection to the major grid. The comparable connection to the major grid on the Cape is halfway up the canal where the power lines come over the canal. The choice of using Lawrence Lynch substation to get to it with transmission lines that may need some adjustment and things like that was probably an economic decision between Eversource and Mayflower Wind. You've heard a lot of economic impacts from Falmouth that probably weren't included in that decision making. We've heard that there were a lot of different options for entry points, and Falmouth was chosen as the entry point among those options. I'd like to suggest that there's a lot of other things that would be possible if we prove that it could be economically more viable than going through Falmouth. And personally, I would like to see, with the HVDC able to go long distances, why you wouldn't take it directly up Buzzards Bay and companion it to the canal to get to that major substation. So the last thing I would do is just recommend that the select board have a representative discuss with Eversource and Mayflower Wind how the decision-making went into this, what the economics were in deciding to go through Falmouth, and working up some new economics that are based on what everybody here has been talking about tonight.
Thank you.
Edward Jalowick, 120 Worcester Court. I am a direct abutter. I have lived along Worcester Court since 1996, in my current home for 4 years, and previous to that I was at Worcester Court Alma Road, just down the block. I know the area like the back of my hand. I can walk it blindfolded. I just want to go over a few points about primarily the park and the streets. The road from Lake Lehman south, that's the blinking light on Worcester Court, is 2 lanes, one north, one south, 19 feet wide with 5-foot 10-inch sidewalks. The road north of Lake Lehman, Worcester Court, from the blinking lights towards Stop and Shop, is 24-foot wide with 5-foot wide sidewalks on the west side only. There are many trees on both sides of the road that are within 5 feet of the paved surfaces. And that number is important because in researching through National Grid and Eversource information on buried cables, they say there cannot be any trees and or hedges within 3 meters of the cables or the duct vault. That's just under 10 feet. And the duct vault, as promulgated by the Mayflower Wind, is 5.75 feet wide. That gives you total just under 10 feet on each side, plus almost 6 feet of the duct vault, 26 feet. More than the width of the street. Some of the trees that abut the street, unless you're dead center down at which you dig, are going to interfere and would have to come down. The park itself is 75 feet wide, sidewalk to sidewalk. The grass area is 75 feet. If you've got to keep 26 feet of that free of trees and hedges, you've lost 1/3 of your park. And that doesn't count the transition vaults, the 12+ manholes, the connection vaults. The park will never be the same and cannot ever be the same. They can't replace the trees because you can't put them over the vaults. And the trees go right across the park. There's a hedge down on the southern end that crisscrosses perpendicular to Worcester Court, if you will. That can't be replaced if this happened. You'd have to put warning signs, buried high voltage cables. Great idea for visitors coming and say, hey, my kid isn't going near that beach. Good Lord in heaven. The impact on the gentleman who just spoke from shipwreck. Oh, we'll use the parking lot for staging during the off-season. There is no off-season. Believe me, in 26 years, I know it summer, fall, winter, and spring. His restaurant depends on that parking in the beach lot, especially at night. If it's full of construction equipment, where in God's name are his customers going to park? That gentleman's made a tremendous investment in the town, and we need to support him. If you go on that parking lot and that beach, in the winter months even, in the coldest, stormiest days, there are many people parked there watching the water, sunrise, sunset, walking the beach. I don't care if it's snowing and cold and the wind's blowing. People are there. There is no off-season. I see many times vans of disabled citizens from day programs and group homes. They get out of their van and there might be 6 or 8 of them with their staff walking the beach, walking the sidewalk, beach combing, playing in the park. It's used year-round, believe me. Worcester Court itself, we all know very well that have lived there for a while. We saw it during the sewer project about 6 or 7 years ago. It is crisscrossed by water, sewer, gas, and storm drain lines at depths that run up to 10 feet or more. When they buried the sewer across Worcester Court and went down Alma Road, it took them 6 weeks to come from Falmouth Heights Road to the end of Alma Road near Little Pond. 6 weeks of total devastation. We had our own little mini Big Dig. Houses were covered with mud and dust for weeks. You had to wash it. Nobody paid for that. We did. We put up with it for the greater good of the sewering. But what would happen when you need to maintain a gas line, a water line, the sewer lines, the storm drains, and that are in proximity to these cables? What if you have to maintain the cables? Their projected life is 60 years. Again, I'm sourcing that from Eversource and National Grid. And they are a high maintenance item. They need to be inspected, tested, and repaired as needed. And it takes weeks typically to repair them because you have to isolate the fault and then dig down and fix it. You've torn up the road again. How do you get by gas, water, sewer lines? Worcester Park itself is crisscrossed by probably a couple of dozen water lines that were put in 6 or 7 years ago as part of the sewer project. Town Water Department, instead of running a line down the west-southbound lane of Worcester Court, ran lines perpendicular through the park from the east to the west. All of those lines would have to be disturbed as part of this. It makes no sense whatsoever for this to be done on Worcester Park or Worcester Court. The road is too small, it's too narrow, there are way too many densely packed. Some houses only have 3,000 square foot lot. And
Sir, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up, please.
Okay, I certainly
Thank you.
shall. If you take just the connection vaults that are planned at the end of the park right across from the beach, and you look at the size of those, you could take my house and drive by it, 120 Worcester Court. You could bury it twice up to the soffit, right at the beginning of the roof line, in those holes. Do we really need or want that in Falmouth? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name's Nick Schultz. I'm from Bourne. I'm a member of Pile Drivers Local Union 56. I'm a commercial diver, and I specialize in beach landings and cable lay. And I got my start in this business, and I want to thank Falmouth. I got my first job in Falmouth, and it opened up a very lucrative career for myself and my family. I've been able to feed them very well, and I'm not a retiree. I'm here to speak out for the working men and women of this community. We have brought a bunch of friends here, 2 of them which have worked for me several times on cable lay projects and recoveries and repairs. We look forward to projects like this. It's exciting. We actually we get to go work our 712s and be home with our families at night. We get to take the boys out to local restaurants that we love. You know, even from prior projects, people still ask me about the pickle jar and where Landucci's went, and you know, and this guy at Shipwreck, new place. I'd love to bring the guys over there, show them that, because they'll travel here way after this job's over to come spend their money there. And you know, your bartender on a slow Wednesday night in the middle of February, she's going to need that $100 tip to go grocery shopping for her kids. You know, that's what we're looking for. Is like. You know, and I'm proud to be able to do this in my own community, do it right, do it safe, do it where men get paid a fair wage, and that we're able to bring this money back to our own community and be proud of such a project that we built. I've been part of numerous other projects. I just built the Woods Hole Ferry Terminal, which the man at Coffee Obsession was sad to see our money leave, because we'd go there every day at coffee. About 10, 12 guys would roll in there, get a sandwich, a coffee, a snack for later, you know, leave a decent tip. And, you know, that's pretty much all I got to say is, you know, thank you for the start in the business in this town where I've been able to provide for my family, you know, and I hope to bring it to many other men and get more of them to work on a project like this, because it's a big help to us, because we don't always get work close to home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Seth Adams. I lived here so long, my address when I grew up was off Thomas Landers Road, no number. I live at 265 Thomas Landers Road. I own 265 Thomas Landers. I own 269 Thomas Landers. I own 494 Thomas Landers. It's upsetting me, like many other people here. I'm going to lose a lot of what I put my life's effort into, and value. I don't really care about the value of my home. My home's worth $1 billion to me. Like most other people here, they're not going to move. They're not going to sell. They don't care about the loan or not loan. We're here. I grew up here. I'm never leaving here. And I'll fight for my home, and I'll fight for my family and their health forever. When I grew up, we had water pollution. We had the base influenced all the water, drinking water in my area and in the Hatchville area. And it took forever to clean it up. I mean, who knows the long-term effects? My mom has cancer. My grandfather died of cancer. Shit, I mean, who knows if I have cancer? There's been lots of studies put out there about the pregnancies are down in this town, brain cancer is up. All of that was attributed to the water, and now we're going to put ourselves and subject ourselves to potential other risks that are quote-unquote unknown. It's a tough pill to swallow in my little area, you know? My neighbor at 301 brought up a great point, one that I wanted to bring up, but I'm glad she did, and I'm happy to reinforce it, that we're talking about building a substation over an aquifer. That's one of the most asinine things I've ever heard of in my life. I appreciate my neighbor Peter Laird bringing up the point about the 22-foot sound barriers built with concrete. Never mind the 40-foot buildings that are mentioned on your website, the dielectric oil that's going to have to be changed, and every piece of mechanical equipment breaks at some point. Those containers that hold that dielectric fluid will leak. It will happen at some point. I don't care if you have a containment or not. If you have a concrete containment, it's going to seep through. We're going to see pollution in our aquifer at some point. There's no question about it. So that leads me to my point, which is a fiscal one. We don't care about your money. We don't want your money. Nobody here cares about your money. You mentioned $2 billion in residential taxpayer savings, but I went through the whole website. There's no detail to that. There's nothing. You're going to give us a few bucks for our fireworks every year. That I'm a local business owner. Every one of the local business owners supported it for 1 million years. We don't need your donation. We don't want it. I can appreciate the desire for clean energy. I've built a bunch of wind turbines, land-based, but I built a bunch of wind turbines. And every single one of those developers sold it the day it got connected. It was all about the buck. Don't tell me it's about clean energy. It's about the buck. There's a lot of other ways to do clean energy that are a lot more environmentally friendly. We could put solar everywhere on this country on buildings that already exist, make no impact to the footprint of the environment of the entire country, and we could power it all. So don't tell me it's about clean energy. Don't tell me it's about the environment. It's about the dollar, and your dollar is no good here.
My name's Mark Finneran, and for 90-plus years, my family has owned a house within that magic 100-foot barrier. It was very great news to hear from the mortgage broker of the future of me getting a mortgage if this thing goes through. I would also like to add that just logically looking at it, I would say that anybody within 200 feet of this is going to have a problem getting a mortgage. As money gets tighter, I'm sure their rates are going to be higher. I think this is going to affect hundreds of homeowners. And are you, just that alone, are you willing to do that to me? Are you willing to cause, and it's inevitable, if this is the case, people are going to lose their homes. Is it worth it? This power that's coming on to Cape Cod, no more than 5% of it will be used here. It will all be exported off. They want to basically get to the other side of the Cape so they can use the Plymouth infrastructure. We have one of the poorest electrical infrastructures in the country as it is. It needs to be rebuilt. But let's look at this, make it simple for everybody and logical. I'll use a transportation analogy. To carry the power that we need on Cape Cod, we need a taxi cab. What they want us to do is build a train and pay for it so we can cart their power across and they can profit from it somewhere else. And if anybody here thinks that, and everybody looks at their power bill, I get 3 of them, it sucks. The energy transportation is more important than the electricity itself, or more expensive than the electricity itself. And if anybody here thinks that they're not going to pay for this overblown infrastructure so these people can profit on the energy delivery part of their bill, they're just crazy, because it's not the case. It's going to cost you, and it's going to cost you forever. We've been negotiating with these people behind the scenes for 2 years. That makes me very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. And sorry, there was one. Also, we're going to need a piece of real estate, 6 to 10 acres, roughly. I couldn't read many of the things that were on there. Obviously, we're going to need special legislation to address this. Being that 95% of this power is just going to transit through here and benefit somebody else, wouldn't we be much better off making special legislation for a piece of property that size to build some kind of a mixed-use, affordable housing, which is #1 on the list of things we need, not to carry somebody else's power through them on our backs. I think it's just wrong. And the mortgage thing alone is enough to make you people vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Mark Cool, 250 Fire Tower Road. I'll keep this short, I'll just read. I'm concerned about the potential noise being emitted from the high voltage substations, either at Lawrence Lynch or Cape Cod Aggregate. According to the Mayflower's final in-air acoustical assessment report of November 2021, referencing Section 2, relevant regulations, it states that locally the Falmouth noise bylaw is for this onshore substation isn't applicable. Yet, Falmouth's wind energy system bylaw does have an applicable noise standard, ratified by the state's Attorney General's office, governing any electrical substation associated with the conversion of wind to electricity. The standard is not to exceed a broadband sound level of more than 6 decibels. In correspondence with the Community Liaison Officer, Kelsey Perry, of Mayflower Wind, January 4th, 2022, I was informed, and I quote, "The project will comply with all applicable noise standards." She continues, "How is it then that all applicable noise standards, particularly the Falmouth Wind Energy System bylaw provision, was not included in the Mayflower's final in-air acoustic assessment report? Absent compliance with local zoning bylaw standards set by your host community and ratified by the state, Mayflower's partnership with my town seems disrespectful. Will Mayflower do another sound modeling assessment for the potential areas affected, implementing the 6 decibel limit? Falmouth doesn't want another potential community wind energy upheaval, replacing the one that will be soon demolished.
Thank you, Mark.
Hi, I'm going to keep it short and sweet too. Nicholas Tessier. I'm a Falmouth resident. I live on Carrot Shop Road. I've been living here since I was in elementary school. I attended this very junior high school back in 1999. I'm a pile driver, welder, and a commercial diver with Local 56, and I have experience with offshore wind farm work from the work I did on Block Island. I heard someone before mention the impact that it could have on our tourism, but it doesn't seem to have impacted Block Island very much. And as sorry, I lost my place. The crew of over 100 workers that were participating in the construction phase over there, it seemed that they were very much appreciated by the local restaurants and establishments, especially during a time when the tourism is not there, you know. Obviously, climate change and fossil fuel reliability are clear and present issues. It's good to see that we're looking to move forward in the direction of clean energy. I'm very interested to see what kind of jobs this creates for our local trade unions and power station workers.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Hal Caswell. I live at 302 Thomas Landers Road. As a scientist who has researched climate change, I think that the clean energy issue has an aspect that I haven't heard addressed. Wind energy is a very nice, environmentally clean source of energy, but you have to convince people to use it. And that includes not putting heavy industrial infrastructure into a densely populated residential area. You put it somewhere else so that future wind energy projects don't sit there and look at the kind of things that you've heard from this room full of people and say, no, we don't want that kind of thing because of its impact on the people whose lives are affected. You just don't do it, and you don't, if you're the town, you don't permit it. That is essential to the long-term ability to have wind energy projects actually be accepted as an important part of a clean energy solution. Don't forget that. You have to think a little bit longer than just what's going to happen at the moment. You want to do it right.
Thank you.
Hi, how you doing? My name's Robert Hackett. I live on Chestnut Street off Meri Vista. I've worked at Jack's over by the Coonamessett. I've worked at the Cape Club. I've probably made some people martinis in here, Manhattans. I've probably landscaped and built your patios. I would just like to kind of give my perspective from a 30-year-old blue-collar gentleman who has to wake up and go to work every day and is trying to survive and live in this town. My name is Robert Hackett. I'm a member of the North Atlantic Carpenters Union. I live on Chestnut Street off Meri Vista. I would like to ask everyone if they've paid for gas or happen to look at the real estate market in the past few months. It's near impossible for a blue-collar resident living in this town to afford a decent living. This project is creating livable and respectable wages that other jobs in this town on Cape, wages that other jobs in this town and on Cape can't even come close to. Hourly rate health insurance, annuity, pensions, livable and respectable conditions, and wages. I would like to ask everyone in this room to think back when they were 30 years old and trying to afford a car right now, a truck right now, groceries, gasoline, taking care of their kids. the basic necessities of life. This project is bringing hope and jobs for hardworking people such as myself and a couple of the men I'm with, and countless others. I get the eyesore, the traffic, the environment issues, and I'm right there with you. But green energy is the way of the future, whether you like it or not. And this groundbreaking project is giving people like myself a chance to be able to stay living in this town without being chased out by not being able to afford to live here. Jobs like this and the Carpenters Union have changed my life and countless others, the jobs and wages we deserve. The project is powering 800,000 houses when families need it the most, creating countless jobs, giving back to the community, and stepping away from nuclear energy and fossil fuels. Not to get off topic, but have you seen what is going on with the local drinking water on Cape Cod? The water is unhealthy to drink. It's disgusting. Wastewater treatment plants such as the company I work for are being built all over Cape Cod. Orleans is wrapping up. Mashpee wastewater plant is getting ready to kick off. Should we not build these projects because of traffic or because it's an eyesore or an inconvenience to your day? The environment in the future is suffering because people don't want their lives and routines to be interrupted. I find that to be selfish. My question would be, how many jobs is this project actually creating, and how many lives are changing with respectable wages that Mayflower Wind is providing?
Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Langenheim, and I live at 499 Woquoit Highway in Woquoit. So I just wanted to put out an idea. You could go up, if you go up 28 and you're getting close to the Otis Rotary, you see these power lines come over the highway, and they go into a vacant space of wooded area near Joint Base Cape Cod. So what they could do is they would have to come up Buzzards Bay and come in either North Falmouth or Catawba or South Bourne, somewhere in that area, and hook into these power line cables that are coming through that area up over to the base. So you could run your cable in the right of way of the high power lines in the middle and go it all the way up across 28 and into the place near Joint Base Cape Cod. And that's a good place for your substation, so it wouldn't be bothering anybody and making a lot of noise. And then you could run the transmission wires down around to Route 151, and that's how you could hook up to Cape Cod.
Thank you. My name is John Densler. I live in North Falmouth near Old Silver Beach. I'm an electrical engineer. I've worked in a power station, and you have these 20-some-odd foot walls, and you wonder why they're there. If you ever have been in a power station and you've seen a circuit breaker, this is something that's maybe 15 feet high, maybe 10 feet in diameter. Occasionally they explode. And this is one of the reasons, not said in any of the literature, why you need a large wall. The other thing we need to think about is we have made some decisions in the past. I've made a good decision. I have solar panels on my house. But the town made a very bad decision in terms of the wind turbines. I testified before the town when they had a meeting. I held up my acoustics book because your consultant was full of baloney, and that's putting it nicely. I thought of filing a professional engineer complaint against him because he didn't know beans about measuring sound. Infrasound was something not in his vocabulary. He didn't understand. And the problem with when you hire a consultant, the consultant tells you what you want to know, not the truth. Now, has any of you seen the Boston Globe about manhole fires that popped up in Boston? They happen. And, you know, many people don't have the experience to judge what's going on. We've got a limited liability corporation. This means how much can you sue them for? Just their assets. So if they cause environmental health problems, like dielectric oil in the aquifer, how much can you get from them to pay for this? Because we'd have to treat the water like from the base. We need to be smart about this. We need to have the right technical background making judgments here. And if you don't, I mean, I have a bachelor's, a master's in electrical engineering. I have an MBA. I have all the coursework for a doctorate in management on where you manufacture electronic equipment. They didn't like the answers at Boston University. China, 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 but that's another story. But you have to understand that we can vote you out next year if you don't pay attention to what we're saying. The decisions that were made in terms of the wind turbines were pushed by somebody who had all enthusiasm, but not much technical background up there. I hope we get more people that know what's going on. And remember, wind turbine blades are something that only have about a 20-year life cycle. And I've seen pictures of those blades being put in landfills. And nobody's answered that question for me. The other thing is, what happens when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine? This happened in England. And where do you get the power when that happens? Wind turbines are fine. Solar panels are fine. I have them, they're a good idea. But you need gas turbines to back up in the case when you don't have wind or you don't have sun. And this has not been addressed at all. England's grid almost went down a few weeks ago because they didn't have enough sun and they didn't have enough wind. So we've got to be smart about things and look at things as a system. As an engineer, I've been taught to think about systems. You start at all the resources for the wind turbines.
I'm going to ask you to start to wrap it up, sir.
And you take a look at what it takes to get rid of them. We haven't seen that in terms of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Robert Dugan, and I'm the clerk from the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm also a Precinct 2 representative for Falmouth Heights. My comments this evening are as an individual and as a third-generation resident of Falmouth Heights. If you do a beach landing here and you're going to be using any of our public parks, you're going to have to put up signage, and that signage is going to have to mention health hazards. This community relies on being a tourist destination. If you come here with a family and you go to Falmouth Heights and you see signage, you're going to head north. You're going to go to another area. You're not going to risk it. We all know how construction projects work. It's been mentioned tonight that we have no off-season. We actually don't have an off-season anymore. If this construction project starts in the beach parking lot or the beach or the park, and now suddenly they have to pack everything up and leave, it is cheaper to take the fine than to move any of that equipment. And you can't tell me that if this is being based on economic factors for Mayflower Wind, that that's not something that they would think of. I also feel it's extremely disingenuous tonight that they started this meeting with one statement, that they're willing to work with the local zoning laws of the town. Now, those local zoning laws are put in to protect the town. They are well aware they have requested a waiver from the Mass Siting Agency, which is the only state agency that can bypass all our local zoning. So if Mayflower Wind is genuine in their statement that they're willing to work with our local zoning, I would like a commitment from them tonight that they will withdraw their request from the Mass Siting Agency for any waiver of local zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Dugan.
It's hard to follow that great statement. Ron Smolowitz, I'm an owner of Coonamessett Farm on Hatchville Road. The power lines that are being proposed will be buried on Hatchville Road in front of the farm. The farm is powered by 3 solar arrays and a wind turbine, and we do our part. We're not a NIMBY type group. Another job that I have to keep the farm going is I work for the fishing industry. And in that capacity, I've been on the Commonwealth's working group for wind energy and fisheries for the last 12 years. I've read a lot of reports. The issue we have here is they're only talking about 1 or 2 gigabytes. There's 30 gigabytes planned by 2030 that have to come ashore. There's over 100 gigabytes in proposed leases right now, over 60 developers. 60, Mayflower is the camel's nose under the tent. Most communities are fighting the power coming ashore in their communities. If Falmouth does not draw a line and say, stop until there's a plan, and that's right, there is no national plan right now for a grid. This is all piecemeal, every developer trying to get ashore, get their little piece. And if we start, the National Renewable Energy Lab was charged last year to develop a 2-year strategy how to deal with this issue. I'm on an advisory committee for offshore wind for that particular National Renewable Energy Lab. One of the directors there told me they should have started working on it 5 years ago, but politically, the large companies, the developers, we call them, did not want that study because they want to own their transmission lines so they could get that transmission fee. I don't know how true that is. It doesn't matter. Most of the objective technical studies have shown that a grid or mesh approach is probably better for the ratepayers in the long run, and it's probably better for the environment in the long run. They want a study, they want an analysis. Most of the studies that I've read, and they're available online, have shown that power should not come ashore on Cape Cod. If we let them ashore on Cape Cod, and it comes up to Sam Turner Road, from that point on, we're going to have giant transmission towers, like in their imagery, in their slide, to the canal and over the canal. And then, once they start seeing that infrastructure, the other developers are going to, and Eversource are going to want to get in. We'll start having lines coming up Buzzards Bay, coming ashore in West Falmouth, coming ashore in Megansett, coming ashore in Katomet, going to probably a giant facility built on base Cape Cod. So this only decision we could do as a community now is say no, and then we'll end up fighting the state. And our no is because we want a plan. We want to know what the future is. Okay, is it just Mayflower Wind coming ashore in Falmouth as a part of a big picture? Or are we going to have this kludge of things coming ashore from every which direction once we let the camel's nose under the tent? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Frank Rosati. I live at 48 Russell Road at the corner of Worcester Court. I have no prepared statements, and you won't have to watch my time because I won't be 3 minutes. And I'm not here tonight, and I respect Mayflower Wind LLC, Shell Oil, people trying to make an honest living. I've done that for 42 years. I have no disrespect for somebody trying to make money, which is what they're trying to do. I'm here tonight to talk to my elected officials, the Select Board. Someone said earlier, the biggest problem, and this is the first time I've had to talk in 2 years, the opportunity to speak, other than a public forum of which there's no response at town meeting or at the Select Board, is the lack of transparency that has gone on. So that things are just set in motion till they get to the point of no return. Well, it's got to stop. And this gentleman that just spoke before, it said, slow it down, stop. Well, if you do that, I know some members of the Select Board, I heard them speak in November, say they weren't happy when Shell Oil unilaterally went to the state and selected Falmouth Heights, because they were out of time, and that's what was in their best interest. Let's start thinking about what's in our best interest, not what's in their best interest.
Good evening. Michael Bullard, 47 Miami Ave.
I've grown up in Falmouth, only to move out for a few years. Moved back because of projects like this. And I was fortunate enough to be able to move back. I'm a business owner here in town. And this project is going to definitely impact me and my neighbors. I own a business on Falmouth Heights parking lot. This is going to be, I think the biggest issue here is the route. I'm for renewable energy. I just purchased a new vehicle that takes care of that. But the route from Gifford Street down Jones Road through Worcester Court to Falmouth Heights Beach cannot happen. It's just going to disrupt everything, like everybody else has said here. You know, I've been there. I just signed a contract with the town to have my concession there at in the summer. And if this goes through, then I'm out. And then everybody else around, we can't, you know, I'm with my neighbor at Shipwreck. And I'm speaking more from the heart. We also had the project, the sewer project around the pond. We put money into the oyster beds in Little Pond. Excuse me, I'm getting a little nervous. But I'm directly opposed of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a scientist. The marine mammal population in our near grounds, between particularly the islands, are at risk. These are designated as critical marine habitat. Other people who have had wind power in other parts of the world are very conscious of pushing it only on areas where they do not lose fishing way or kill indiscriminately. The right whale is endangered. They are down to teens in numbers, and they live and go through these areas associated with these wind farms. Please think carefully about our environment. Many of us, when we were children, had a pet mouse. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have more speakers? Go ahead.
Hi. Cheryl Williams. I'm co-president of the T-Ticket Civic Association and representing, as Dave does in his organization, over 250 members. We stand behind the Falmouth Heights Meri Vista Association in not supporting the Mayflower project for the myriad of concerns that you've heard tonight. Specifically, the Article 97 conversion is huge, that needs to be addressed, but also the disruption to the neighbors and the neighborhood. Please, do the right thing. Do the right thing.
Thank you. Okay, we'll take one more speaker.
Good evening. This is Eleanor Ling, and I'm from Precinct 1. I live on 51 Carlson Lane. I have been a homeowner in Falmouth since 1992. First, I'd like to thank the Select Board for this forum because this is a great opportunity for the community members to voice their concerns. And also, I love to hear all these different suggestions that could be, consider going forward. What I'd like to say is that, I'm sure that many of you already know that we have a climate crisis and that the state's goal is to get to net zero with carbon emission by 2050. And the way to reach that goal is to speed up the transition to clean and renewable energy. And so I support the Mayflower Wind project. And I heard a lot of concerns, and I totally understand that some of the residents are concerned about temporary disruption and inconveniences because they live in that neighborhood. That is totally understandable. And also, I think the valid concern is, groundwater protection. And I like to make a few points because I heard people say, well, Falmouth doesn't get, more than 5% of this energy. Think, where does Falmouth, or where has Falmouth been getting its electricity? Where have we been getting our power? It's from other towns and cities that have power plants that have been using dirty coal and natural gas to generate electricity for us that we benefit. And I really think that this is a great opportunity for us as a community to contribute to the overall state goal of reaching clean and renewable energy supply. And also, we are a coastal town, and we all know that, our beaches, our, coastal area has been really suffer from climate crisis. And so I would hope that we keep an open mind and think about the big picture, and not just, yes, of course, the select board will, consider all the options and alternatives so that Falmouth can get the best benefit from this project. And also, I would like us to think that we, think about how we can contribute to the state, to the region, okay? Because I think we benefited all these years from other towns and cities generating electricity for us. And I think that it is very encouraging to hear all these different suggestions tonight. And I also, we all also understand that the select board already said this, they have not made the final decision. So let's give us the opportunity to consider all the options. Maybe, at the end, okay, maybe another town is better. But let me also point out, someone else has said earlier that, there's no bigger plan, there's no a comprehensive plan, and Falmouth is the only town on the Cape Cod to have offshore cable interconnection plan.
Dr. Ling, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, yes. And I just want to make it clear that other town on Cape Cod has already started their construction. The Vineyard Wind, and also a town of Barnstable, and also they just signed a second host community agreement to have a second offshore wind project landing on that town, and they are in the
okay. I'm going to need to cut you off.
Third project.
Okay, these are the last two speakers because we need to give Mayflower Wind an opportunity for closing comments, and I have a few myself. So we will start with you.
Jonathan O'Reilly, 14 Montgomery Ave, one street over from Worcester Court, right near Falmouth Heights Beach. So there's been a lot of questions tonight about transparency, and I'm a seasonal person down here, but I heard about the meeting and I drove down an hour. Is there a reason why this meeting wasn't on a Saturday so more of the seasonal people in the neighborhood could be here? Was there a reason there was no Saturday meeting so the neighbors could come?
Sure. So whenever we talk about a public forum, we discuss whether to have it on a weekday evening or a weekend, and there is no perfect answer. On a weekend, a lot of young families have activities with their children. So this, as was said before, this is not going to be the last public forum, so if the board chooses, we could certainly have another one on a weekend.
If I were to ask hypothetically, what would be the worst place to take a high voltage cable and land it on the Cape, would you say a highly populated, frequently visited beach? We need to step back and look at some common sense here. The town has plenty of coastline. I don't know why you would pick a highly dense, populated beach where families go to land this cable. I'm not against landing it somewhere, but that would probably be one of the 3 worst places in Falmouth.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Papalia, 101 Worcester Court, which is the blinking light. That's my house. Everyone knows the blinking light. I'm curious. I have a question. It's to select people, and I want to know a yes or no. I won't take up much time. Do any of you live in this area that'll be grossly affected by this?
I'll speak for myself. I live in Woods Hole, but I grew up and I know Falmouth Heights very, very well. And I love Falmouth Heights.
Well, how about the rest of you? You're making the decision. Are you there? Or are you just somewhere else? Pardon me?
Sorry. Here we go. I live on 18 Texera Lane and off of Hayway Road.
How about the rest of you?
I'm in North Falmouth.
And I live off of Jones Road, so this cable will go by my subdivision.
I live near Jenkins Pond.
Well, for those of you that are affected and aren't, it's not a good decision. You know that. And I think that deep down inside, you realize that it's not a good call. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just comment quickly. I just want to comment that the ultimate decision will be town meeting. We're just trying to work out the details if they can be worked out.
Mayflower Wind, do you have any closing comments?
Thank you. I first of all want to thank everybody for coming this evening and for providing very well thought out and powerful comments. We're hearing them, we're receiving them, and we will take them into consideration. We look forward to future opportunities to have similar forums, and we will commit to having, I guess, a future meeting with the town. So thank you again for your time this evening, and be safe.
And I would just like to close by saying I really appreciate the number of people who came out tonight to speak. Falmouth is a very passionate town, and I believe that the Select Board will take your comments into consideration. But I also want to remind you that we have made no decisions and have signed nothing with regards to this Mayflower Wind project. So thank you.